Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday, episode 9. So I wanted to point out quickly at the beginning of this that it is September 9th, 9/9, and we are on episode 9 of Wind Down Wednesday. And repeating sequences of 3 are considered to be significant in numerology. So we're talking about 999 here. So I looked it up. Numerology is not one of my areas of expertise, but I was curious. And what it said was there's a lot of different things, but what really resonated with me for tonight in this 999 repeating sequence is the idea of the end of struggle and the beginning of wisdom, because that's what growth is all about, letting go of the old, embracing the new. So I thought that was really cool, and that's going to come up again kind of near the end of what I'm going to talk about, this repeating idea of nines. So really quickly, I just wanted to remind you that I am running a special through the end of September, 30% off my services through my website, which is paulataylorenergy.com. with the code kindness 2020, and I will post that in the comments at the end. And I encourage you to reach out. You know, part of being in growth is asking for help when you need it, and we all can use some assistance once in a while. So let's talk about growth. I'm really excited about this. So I was meditating on growth the other night. I've talked in the past about sometimes I get woken up. It's always between 3 and 5 a.m. I'm not sure why, but I woke up at 3 the other night. I could tell I wasn't going to be going back to sleep for a while, which is usually my sort of trigger to pay attention. Is there messages coming in? Is someone trying to contact me from a spirit realm? Do I just need to work on myself in that silence of night? I was watching a horror movie with my husband the other night, and they were saying that 3 o'clock is the witching hour, and it's when the veil between worlds is the thinnest. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if, there's really anything to that, but it tends to be 3 in the afternoon is also really creative time for me. So for whatever reason, it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I woke up. And so I started meditating on, it ended up being on growth. I was just sort of like reaching out and like, why am I awake? Is there information coming to me? Is there someone trying to contact me? And I had this really amazing vision, and this has happened to me a few times. I talk about it in a couple different places in my book, and I wish that I could project like an image of what I saw, because I'm not really a visual person. I'm more of a words person, but when I have these visions, it's almost like it was like time-lapse photography, and it was just so beautiful. And I knew right away that this is what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to do my best to kind of share the information that came into me about growth, and I probably won't do it justice, and I won't be able to describe it as well as what I saw, but I just thought it was so beautiful and awe-inspiring, and I wanted to share it with you all. So we talk about growth in a lot of different ways in the energetic community and in mental health and emotional ways. And so the first thing I wanted to distinguish was, what kind of growth are we talking about? So I'm talking about spiritual growth. And spiritual growth is very strongly linked to emotional growth. There's a lot of people in the sort of New Age movement that will say something like, emotions are just energy in motion, that emotions link you to your energy. And that's true to an extent, but I feel like it's a little bit oversimplified. So what I feel like what spiritual growth brings you emotionally, I'm having a hard time talking tonight, is emotional maturity. So sometimes our emotions are ego-driven. And so that's not really the same as when we are connected to an intuitive messaging, when we're connected to our highest self. That's not the same as getting triggered. And we talked last week about getting triggered, and I've written blog posts about getting triggered. You can check those out on my website. But what spiritual growth gives you, what spiritual expansion gives you, is the ability to distinguish between what's going on with your emotions and to process them, maybe not in real time, especially in a traumatic event, but but to stay with them and process them more quickly so they don't get stored in the body and kind of stuck. And that's a lot of what we talked about last week. I don't want to go back into that. But that's why, to me, the spiritual is the foundation of everything. If you're not spiritually healthy, it's really hard to be physically healthy. It's really hard to be emotionally healthy, because spiritual or energetic, I use those terms interchangeably, that's the foundation of everything. So let's talk about the vision that I had the other night, because we talk about growth. We use a lot of different metaphors for growth. Sometimes people will say, it's like climbing a mountain. Or so I've heard people say it's more like a spring where you kind of come up and then you're down and then you're up and then you're down. And the vision that I saw the other night was just so amazing and so organic. It gave me a completely different viewpoint of growth. And so what I saw was growth as a tree. So a tree starts out as a seed. So when you're in this seed, and of course this is a metaphor, so I'm going to do my best to kind of talk about each of these stages and how it relates to growth in a spiritual fashion. But the amazing thing that I saw was, as this information was coming in, I kind of saw, this little seed in the ground, and then I saw it kind of growing, and it was so beautiful. It was amazing. So when you're a seed, that's the very beginning stage of growth, and it's very isolating. You're kind of in this hard shell. You're in the dark, maybe you're planted in the ground, and it doesn't seem like a lot is happening. And it really takes a lot of effort at the beginning of a spiritual journey to get that seed to grow, to kind of crack that shell and start to sprout as a seedling. And so that's at the very beginning of your spiritual journey. If you've never done any spiritual work, it can seem really hard. It can seem really daunting, because you got to crack through that shell. And then even as you start to grow a little bit, then you're still kind of in this loamy, dark soil. You can't really see around you. I felt as this seed, as you come out of the seed, it's still kind of stifling feeling, because there's just this darkness all around you. But you're getting water, you're getting nutrients, you're on this journey. So as you start to grow more, your little seedling starts to sprout, and eventually you break ground. And this is like, maybe your first big revelation where it's like, oh, let there be light. But there's still more to come. So once you break ground, you grow, you're a little sapling, and you're just getting whipped all over the place. You're flexible, but you don't have the root structure yet to really stand your ground. So you might be getting whipped around, and that can be difficult. So then eventually you get to the point where you're more of like a tree. And so you've got the roots to kind of keep you grounded, but you're still growing, because a tree is sprouting branches. And then off the branches are whatever the seed pods. I like acorns, so I'm going to use acorns tonight. So then you're dropping acorns. So at any point in this growth process, you may no longer be in the same tree, which I just think is so beautiful. So we've talked about ancestral trauma. We've talked a little bit about trauma in general. And so I thought about this in terms of your family of origin. So you come from this ancestral tree, right? That's already there, this line of energy, and you grow up, and then maybe you sprout off, or as an acorn, kind of you fall and you decide to start in a different place in the forest. And for a lot of us, that's the first kind of step in spiritual growth, is stepping away a little bit from what we were raised with and figuring out what our own beliefs are, or figuring out, if there are things we'd like to do differently from how we grew up. And you can kind of take with you what you want as your own new tree, but then you're starting all over again. You're back as, you're an acorn, and you've got to crack out and grow again. So this process, I saw this process just repeating, and it was so beautiful, and it never ends. And that's the cool thing about this. But in each stage, there's rewards to each stage, and there's challenges to each stage. As a mature tree, I was looking, my neighbor has this gigantic pine tree in her front yard, and it's probably about 60 feet tall and maybe 30 feet wide as far as the canopy. And there's a bunch of branches that are just kind of like gnarled up and they don't really have any growth on them anymore. You know, that growth was kind of abandoned to make way for new growth. And when you look at the size and scope of something like that, it's just incredible to think that we grow the same way. And that's kind of what I was shown the other day. And the other thing that I saw that I thought was so beautiful was what happens when a tree is damaged. So we've had a lot of fires. There's terrible fires right now in a lot of parts of the country. We had one here in Tucson. And when a tree gets burned, even if it's burned beyond recognition, if it's ash, that ash becomes new growth. That ash is nutrients for the next wave of growth. So even if you feel like you've been damaged just beyond repair, your tree is just gone, you're not gone. You can start over in a new form of growth. And sometimes that's part of growth is this, is the struggle, like that 999 going from struggle to wisdom. And sometimes we do feel like we're just completely destroyed. And that's the beautiful thing is that we are never destroyed. And spiritually, we go on infinitely. And in this physical realm, there's this denseness of matter that we're growing through. And so that's a lot of the struggle that we have is kind of being here. And that's kind of what this spiritual, everything that we've been doing together, that's what that's all about. So the first thing I want to say is that it's very important to embrace the stage of growth that you're in, to let go of judgment. And when I started thinking about this, it reminded me of this. I've been doing yoga for, I had to count, 23 years now. And I had this video years ago with a fairly famous yoga teacher, and a lot of the things he said, that's one of the things I love about yoga, is so mind-blowing. Someone will just kind of say something in a class and like 20 years later, I still think of this phrase. So there was a phrase in this yoga video where he's talking about a preparation for triangle pose, and you're sort of in this starfish. You've got your legs out and your arms out. And before you go into the next pose, he says, fill out the space that you now are. And the way he said that, I just love that. So that's what we're talking about with growth. Whatever stage you're in, you live in that stage fully. You fill that space fully. And that's how you grow. And then the same in the next stage, in the next phase. And even in periods of dormancy, so if you think about trees, depending on the type of trees, they might go into dormancy. You're not dead in dormancy. You're in preparation. You're in a healing mode. So even if you feel like you're in a state of dormancy right now, like you're kind of in a winter state, you're preparing for new growth. And that new growth doesn't happen without letting go of the old dead leaves and then resting and renewing yourself for the spring that comes when you start growing again. So I hope I did sort of justice. It just was such a beautiful vision, and I was so excited to share it and to think of it in that way, because I've never thought about, just when you think about all the types of trees there are and all the stages they could be in. I went on a hike today in a forest, and there's bark that's chunky and kind of spiny looking, especially in the desert. There's smooth bark. I mean, it's all beautiful. And this journey is all beautiful. It's all about embracing where you are, letting go of judgments, and just being in the moment, and then allowing information to come into you, allowing that growth to continue to happen, and you'll continue to expand, and your tree will just grow into this beautiful 60-foot amazing tree that's got some gnarled branches and maybe some areas of damage, but when you look at the whole picture, it's just such a beautiful thing. It's an awe-inspiring thing. So let me talk a little bit about the meditation that we're going to do tonight that is around growth. So I want to spend a little bit of time grounding, really getting into the body, because we're going to work on tapping into our intuition, on kind of bringing in some intuitive messages to ourselves. And the best way to do that is when you're in a really nice, grounded, neutral state. And luckily, this is week 9, so you've been practicing. Even if week 1 was your very first time ever meditating, you've had 9 weeks of practice at getting into this meditative state. And so that's where you want to be when you're going to invite this information in. So we're going to ask for 3 messages today. And again, I say this every week, be really gentle with yourself. If nothing comes through, that's okay. Don't get worried about that. You can repeat this another time. You're not always going to get all the information at one time. You may get one message tonight, and it's so important that that's the message that you were meant to hear. Or maybe you get no messages, but you just get really grounded and relaxed. That's totally fine too. But what we're going to do is check in with our body. We're going to check in with our emotions, and then we're going to check in with our spirit, with the spiritual realm, which includes any of your guides or straight to the divine source, your higher self, just asking for a spiritual message. And of course, what we're looking for is growth. So what are the messages from these parts of us that will help us grow, that will help us expand? So I wanted to give a little bit of an example of how I do this. This is the kind of thing that I do in a coaching session. And sometimes if somebody's blocked, or if I'm blocked myself, or if I'm just looking for more information, I'll draw a tarot card. I have this beautiful Vision Quest tarot deck that's a Native American inspired that really connects with me. And so just as an example tonight, I drew a single card to represent this meditation, this kind of discussion that we're having. And I thought it was really funny because it was a 3. It was a 3 of water. So we've got triple 9s, and then we've got a 3, which is, of course, 9s are a multiple of 3. So it was really numerologically, I know that's significant. I can't tell you exactly what the significance is. But so the card I drew, actually, some of my cards actually have a word on them. And this one said fullness. And I just thought that was so perfect because that fill up the space that you now are. That's what we're doing today. So it was filling your bowls to overflowing, letting go of old oppression, and falling into a pool of fullness. So growth is fullness. That's what we're going for. Wherever we're at, if you're in this little tiny seed, fill up the seed that you're in, and then eventually you'll crack that shell and start growing. If you're an old established tree and you've got a really good root system, fill that whole space out and invite more growth in, because you'll never stop growing. As long as you keep expanding, as long as you keep open, you're always going to keep growing. And that's the most beautiful thing about growth. And sometimes the frustrating thing about growth, because sometimes it seems like a struggle. But I will tell you, as somebody who's been doing this work I was thinking about this because I was thinking about yoga. So I started doing spiritual work on myself at about 16. And then about 3 years later, I started with the yoga, and I was in therapy. And when I look back over this 26 years that I've been doing this work, everything is easier for me now. I still have struggles. I still have obstacles. But I have so many tools to help myself get through that stuff. I have people I can reach out to. I have guides. I have intuition. I have my tarot cards. I have movement. There's so many things that we can use to continue that journey into growth. And as if you're at the very beginning of this journey, sometimes it's a little bit like, you got to get up that first slope a little bit. You got to break out of that shell of the seed. But once you break ground for the first time and you feel the warmth of the sun and the warmth of that light, that divine energy, that love on your body, on yourself, in your spiritual hole that we all have inside that we're looking to fill, that journey seems well worth it. And then you'll have more struggle, but then you'll have more breakthrough. And it's just this sort of beautiful, like a breathing. It's a contraction and an expansion, or like a heartbeat over and over again. And I still am doing that. I might have a few days of contraction where I'm struggling a little bit, and then I release and I expand. So let's get into the meditation. Just checking that I've got all my notes here. So as always, be very gentle with yourself. If you start to get emotional, just let it come through. Take some deep breaths if you need to. If the messages aren't coming through, don't worry about it. Just be gentle with yourself. This is all about filling up that space that we're in. And the space that you're in now is exactly where you're meant to be. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water. So start like we always do with a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. You can let it out with a big sigh like I just did. Imagine the top of your head gently opening, expanding. Invite divine light and love to come in through the top of your head. If you see this as a color, just invite that color in. And let this light, let this energy fill your head. Let it come into your scalp, into your skull, to the bones of your face and jaw. Invite this energy to come into your throat and neck. Let this beautiful divine light flow into your shoulders and into your upper arms. Let it come into your elbows and your forearms, into your wrists and hands. Allow this beautiful light, this energy of the divine to flow into your chest and upper back. Let it come into your belly, your mid-back, into your low belly and low back. Let this energy come into your hips and pelvis. You can place your hands on your thighs if you like. Just encouraging this energy to bring us down into the body fully. Take a nice big deep breath into your hips and your pelvis and let it out with a sigh. Allow this beautiful divine light to flow down your thighs. You can run your hands along the thighs if you like, just to help your body recognize this energy as it flows down. Let it come into your knees, down into the shins and calves. Take a nice deep breath into your knees and lower legs. Send a bit of gratitude into this lower part of your body for supporting you physically and energetically. And allow that energy to come all the way to your ankles and feet. If your feet are touching the ground, really feel where they contact the ground. Imagine yourself digging your toes into some earth. Maybe it's a beautiful soil garden or a beach with sand, whatever feels good here. Maybe you're in a beautiful forest for this meditation. Any kind of trees that come to you. There's a mossy ground and you're just letting yourself really feel rooted here, connected to this earthy, beautiful forest. Take another 2 or 3 deep breaths, breathing into any areas of tension that you're carrying in the body. Let that go for this meditation. Notice how you're feeling now as compared to when you first started. Maybe you feel heavier and more relaxed. Maybe your mind is calmer. Maybe your emotions feel settled. Let everything settle like ripples on a pond, becoming totally still. We're staying completely in the body today, so give yourself a moment or two to really become present here. Breathing into any areas of tension, anything that's calling for your attention. Send a little bit of love into the area just around your body. It's part of your body energetically. Let everything settle and relax here. And as you're ready, let yourself be in this forest. If you're familiar with traveling to your energetic sanctuary, to your planet, you can imagine this forest here. If you're not, don't worry about it. Just picture whatever comes to you. Invite an image in. Set an intention to be in your personal forest of growth here. Look around at the trees. Notice what they look like. Are they tall? Are they densely packed? Are they far apart? There's no wrong answer here. Whatever you see is perfect. Let yourself wander through this forest until you find your personal tree, your personal stage of growth right now. Maybe it's just a plot of earth. Maybe you're still in the seedling stage. Maybe it's a small sapling. Maybe it's a huge tree. Whatever you see is perfect. We're just connecting with our stage of growth here. And I want you to sit next to your tree, to your stage, and put your hands on whatever it is that's there, whether it's just a plot of earth, whether it's a tiny sapling, whatever you see, just gently place your hands here and let yourself feel love and gratitude for this tree. Let yourself become one with this stage of growth, with this tree, with this seed, with this sapling. Let yourself really feel what it's like. Fill up the space that you now are. Fill up the space of your tree, of your growth. If you find areas of damage, give them a little bit of extra love. Let go of judgment and just be in love here. Just be in gratitude. Notice how beautiful your growth is at whatever stage you're at. If it feels appropriate, you can do some pruning here very gently, just as you might lovingly prune a tree or a bush in your yard. If there's any areas that you're ready to let go of, very gently, with love, with gratitude, with the awareness that anything you release from your tree will nurture another tree in this forest. So you're releasing these things with love. So anything you've been holding on to, maybe you're ready for new growth and you'd like to lovingly place an acorn in a beautiful plot of rich earth where it will grow. Whatever comes to you here is fine. Your tree, your growth may not need any pruning, and that's fine too. Give your tree whatever it needs here. before we move on. Maybe your tree needs water. Maybe it just wants love and gratitude, as we started with. Maybe it wants decorations. Maybe you hang some beautiful garland. Maybe your tree needs a hug. Let yourself really be present with this growth. Let go of any impatience that comes up. If you feel that your tree is not at a stage that you were hoping for, that you were expecting, let go of those expectations. Your tree is perfect. Your growth is perfect. Send this love, this joy, this gratitude into your growth for a few last moments before we move on. And as you're ready, stay in your forest. Maybe you sit with your back against your tree or next to your plot of earth. But let yourself separate ever so slightly from the tree. You're staying connected, but you're not one at this point. You're stepping back into your human form, into your physical form, to ask for messages about growth. We're in our forest of growth, which is the perfect place to ask for this intuitive guidance. And remember, if nothing comes to you today, that's okay. That's what's meant to happen. You can always repeat this at another time. Be gentle with yourself. And as you're ready, we're going to ask for our first intuitive message. This is a message for you from your body about growth. What is the divine message? What does the intuition today tell you that your body needs for growth? Don't try too hard here. Ask the question and then let it go and just sit quietly and see if you get a response. Thank your intuition. Thank your guidance for this message. And then we'll move on to ask for a message from our emotions. So this is a message from your emotions to you about your growth. What do your emotions need from you to continue growing? You may receive just a one-word answer. It may be more complex. It may not be in words. You may see a picture of something. Let these insights come to you as they're meant to, without judgment or expectation. What do your emotions need from you to continue your growth? And then as you're ready, we'll ask for our third message tonight. Let yourself really expand here outside of the physical body just for a moment. This message may come from your higher self, from your soul, your spirit. It may come from one of your guides, your spirit guides. It may come directly from the source, from the divine. ask yourself, what is the message from Spirit to me about my growth? How can I serve my spirit? How can I continue to grow and expand? What is my spiritual message today? And as you have these messages, let them come fully into your space, into your body, into your energetic body as well. And then let them go. Let yourself sit in gratitude for a moment for this connection. Redirect some of that love and gratitude towards your tree, your growth. And set an intention, an affirmation for yourself about your personal growth. Whatever comes to you here, again, is perfect. If nothing comes, that's fine. It may be as simple as, I am open to growth. I release fear and open to growth. I expand into growth. I fill up my growth, my tree. I am fully present in my growth. Anything that comes to you here, say it out loud if you can, if you're comfortable. Carry it into the next few days. Notice how you feel here. Do you feel more expanded and light than when we started? Do you feel enlightened? Do you have a path forward? Maybe you've just fallen asleep, and that's okay too. Let yourself slowly come away from your forest and back into the body. We never really left the body. We were perhaps in our sanctuary briefly, perhaps just in the mind or the space around ourselves, but make sure you come fully back. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body. Let yourself take a nice big deep breath, and this time let it out with a sigh, with a sound. Take another deep breath. Let those messages come back to you, and then breathe them out into your energetic space, into your body, into your emotions, into your heart space. And as you're ready, bring your awareness into your feet, maybe wiggle your toes a little bit. If you'd like to imagine closing the top of your head, your crown chakra, you can, but you don't need to. You can stay open to this divine light if it feels appropriate. Maybe wiggle your fingers a little bit. Just let yourself come back into the body. I am fully present in my body. I am open to growth. I expand into my growth. As you're ready, very gently, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I thought it was really interesting. The messages that I got were in threes, just sort of 3 repeating words each time we talked about. I pulled the card of 3, and we're on September 9th, 9/9 of episode 9. So there's definitely a 3s and 9 things going on tonight. So if you're interested, I encourage you to look into that more and notice these things in your life. When you notice repeating patterns, when you notice things in nature, when something stands out to you, when a song comes on the radio and you get a little whew, a lot of times that's an intuitive message. So let yourself be aware, let yourself open up to that intuitive guidance. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and your week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.